Witzke with the Candlelight Funeral Home, and as a funeral director, people have always made the comment that I'm the one that they're going to see in the end. So I guess the one that set up the schedule tonight took that to heart and put me at the end of the speakers. A large part of my job is taking care of the deceased. The large part of my job is working with the living. And that's who I'm here to help and comfort. There's only so much I can do for the deceased and treat them with reverence and the respect that they deserve, but I'm trying to help the family get through a loss that they have experienced, and a lot of emotions that they're feeling and going through. And in the recent years, I'd say in the last 20 years, people have started talking about funeral arrangements in advance. And this is really a good idea, because it gets people a chance to talk to each other, explain what they think is appropriate for them, and it takes a lot of the anxiety out of death. And I handle, most funeral homes handle a lot of pre-arrangements on a regular basis. And something I think is important for you all to know tonight is there's many different levels and different types of pre-arrangements. You can pre-plan your funeral with a funeral director, or you can go online, you can go to my website, and I have a pre-arrangement form that you can just look at and have an idea of the information that's needed legally, so that we can file the permits that are necessary, the death certificate, and all of that type of documentation. Or you could go ahead and meet with a funeral director and say, I just want to pre-plan, I don't want to pay for anything now, I just want to have my records recorded at the funeral home. And the other option is you can pre-arrange and prepay. In Maryland, if you prepay for your funeral, you can make it an irrevocable funeral arrangement, which means if you go into one of the facilities where you're spending $240 or more a day, and you spend through all of your assets and have to go on state assistance, if you prepay for your funeral and your arrangements, your cemetery, that's all exempt from the assets that you have to spend before they'll give you any assistance. So that's something that we help people with often. As a matter of fact, today, being the end of the month, I had 2 people call me today and say, I've got to have this done by the November 1st, or by the 31st, actually. And that's usually not the best time or way for people to do it when they feel under the stress of having to make the decision at the time like that. It's better if you can think about it ahead of time. But that's something that a lot of people find very helpful. Something else I was asked to talk a little bit about tonight was cremation. And cremation is allowed or recognized in the Catholic Church, and Chapter 417 in the appendix of the Catholic Order of Christian Burials regarding cremation states that cremation is acceptable as long as the cremated remains of a body should be treated with the same respect given to the human body from which they come. This includes the use of a worthy vessel to contain the ashes, the manner in which they are carried, the care and attention to appropriate placement and transport, and final disposition. The cremated remains should be buried in a grave or entombed in a mausoleum or a columbarium. The practice of scattering cremated remains on the sea, from the air, or on the ground, or keeping cremated remains in the home of a relative or friend of the deceased are not reverent disposition that the Church requires. Whenever possible, appropriate means dignity, the memory of the deceased should be adopted, such as a plaque or a stone which records the name of the deceased. So that's explains the church's stance on the cremated remains. Something that's important for people to know too, that some of you here are probably veterans. And as a veteran, you're generally entitled to, if you're honorably discharged, entitled to a burial space in a veteran's cemetery. And that space is also available for the spouse of the veteran. And they pay for the opening and closing of the grave, and they pay for the memorialization or the marker for the veteran and the spouse. If someone chooses to be cremated, the veteran cemetery does have columbariums and niches and special burial plots just for cremated remains. So if you're a veteran, that's something that you might want to think about. And one other thing that I really would like to emphasize and let people know about, in Maryland in particular, but all throughout the country, in the last several years, there's been a movement where funeral homes are being bought up by corporations. And a lot of the funeral homes in the area may trade under a former family name. My family, Witzke, two of the funeral homes that our family operated are no longer owned by us, so that's why I'm the Candlelight Funeral Home. My daughter, my wife, my father, we all work together, my sister work at the funeral home. But I think that when you go to, and I believe this, when you go to a family-owned funeral home, you do get a much higher level of care and assistance. And that's an important question for you to ask if you're talking to somebody about making pre-arrangements or funeral arrangements. One of the good things about pre-planning in this state is if you pre-fund your funeral and you pay for it in advance, the money doesn't go to the funeral home at that point. It goes to an insurance company. And if you choose to move to another state, or you choose to alter your funeral arrangements, or if the funeral home that you made these arrangements with sells to a larger corporation and you don't like the way things are going there, you can transfer those arrangements to another funeral home and transfer those funds to another funeral home. So that's something a lot of people don't know about, and I think it's helpful to know. So thank you.